in order of when it was written in the article, here are all of the things that started to annoy me when it comes to Russell Wilson. Number one, this was a couple of days after the Super Bowl. Russell Wilson goes on the Dan Patrick Show. He vents about pass protection. I've been sacked 400 times. A perceived lack of say in personnel decisions. Okay, you're a frustrated quarterback. You watched the Super Bowl. You feel like you should be there. You can understand how someone might, I guess, operate that way and in a public setting go off the traditional say nothing political script that he has and try to actually create some change. But that's not what bothered me. What bothers me is the amount of times that he said the word legacy. My legacy, my legacy, my legacy. We have a lot of different people that follow the NFL. Not all of them are football fans first. I will say I'm a football fan first. I am a person who wishes that he had played in the NFL or even played at the college level. I was only able to get to the high school level. Was I good? Yes. Was I great? No. Do I take flag football too seriously as a result of not being great? Yes. Do I think I'm great at flag football? Who cares? This is what you need to care about. It's a team game, and anyone who's played it, you're supposed to think about everyone else around you. And yeah, when all of a sudden it becomes your job and you want to earn money, it might change a little bit. But when you start saying the word legacy and legacy and legacy over and over and over and over again, why are you saying it? It's probably because you don't have a very good one. And yeah, Russell Wilson's won a Super Bowl. So have a lot of quarterbacks. He also threw an interception at the 1 yard line to lose another Super Bowl. Is that Pete Carroll's fault? You could argue that. Is that the defense's fault for blowing a 10-point lead late in that game? You could argue that too. It's not all on Russ. I mean, they shouldn't have gotten to that game because Russ threw 4 interceptions the week before, but I digress. That doesn't matter. What matters is Russ has become a person apart from his team. And while that might not be the case in Denver right now, hearing him say the word legacy as many times as he did in that press conference just drove me absolutely bonkers. It's October of 2019. Russell Wilson got mad about only attempting 5 passes in the second half of a game that they led 24-0. He believes that it cost him a chance to grab hold of the MVP race. Now, when he believed that, who knows on that front? That could have been said immediately after the game. That also could have been said during the latter months of the year. But as someone who had first started covering the Seahawks in 2019, yeah, that game was impressive, but, Russell Wilson was not as impressive in the second half of that year, which is something I would come to find out is a theme with Russell Wilson. This is where I started to wonder just about how willing he is to do the smartest thing possible. Because I used to think that he was one of the smartest quarterbacks in the game and that the guy didn't fuck up. That's why I like Tom Brady as much as I do, not just because he won my favorite team all of those Super Bowls. I always felt like Tom Brady would not make a dumbass decision. And after that awesome stretch to open up 2020, where he looked like the number one guy in the MVP race, he turned the ball over 10 times in 4 games, and they go 1-3 over that stretch. And a lot of the mistakes are just careless, and you watch them and you're like, what is going on here? So a source in the front office in this ESPN article said, are we trying to win games or are we trying to win the MVP? And it did feel like that, especially when Russell Wilson was talking about how he wanted to win MVPs. And again, if he wants to win MVPs, go ahead. But when you see an article that comes out in ESPN in 2017 from Seth Wickersham that highlights that there's maybe a disconnect between you and the rest of the team. Guys who might not be with the team much longer. Guys whose careers might be waning. The star might be running out. Talking about some of those great defenders that played with Russ and helped Russ win that first Super Bowl and get back to the second one. That relationship became strained. You would think someone like that would maybe think to himself, you know what? Is legacy as important to me as having the love of my teammates? And again, not everyone would do this. And maybe I'm naive in thinking that everyone should operate with this kind of team-first mentality in football. I know that if I were in that situation, I would probably think very long and hard about what I can do to make those people like me more or feel more connected to me. The Seahawks set up a Zoom press conference at Russell Wilson's request where he said he expected to have input on the hiring of a new offensive coordinator. Now, what's funny is, though, you're asking this after playing like shit. And he sucked in that game. I mean, he telegraphed the pick 6 to DK Metcalf. I think you could argue that that was a bad play call by Brian Schottenheimer, too. But he was sacked 5 times. He was running for his life. I felt like he was rather careless in that game. And it felt like with the Dan Patrick show interview, which happened later, or in this press conference, it felt like he was kind of distancing himself from everything that had happened. And again, you were a part of this too. Is it really all on Brian Schottenheimer when every single offensive coordinator that you have worked with has seen similar results from you, where there is a bit of, I think, obsession with making the big flashy plays happen? And I know some people are going to look at the numbers. I know Ben Baldwin's posted a bunch of times about how, well, actually the numbers indicate X, Y, and Z. But come on, you watch the games, you get this sense that that's what he's all about. And then you hear him talk and you get this sense that that's what he's all about. This one is the one that I really cannot understand. And I understand why a player would get mad about it, but to the point of it breaking, it's not like the Seahawks drafted Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. They merely went to their pro days because that was the only chance that they were going to have to see them. Mahomes did not fall. Josh Allen did not fall. Maybe Josh Allen would have been taken with that first overall pick in 2018, which the Seahawks apparently were shopping Russell Wilson around for. Russell Wilson and his camp found out. They were more pissed about that. That I can understand a little bit more. But getting pissed off at a general manager doing his due diligence, looking at every single possible quarterback in a draft, to me, that's a reach as far as things that you should allow yourself to get mad at. Were you playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the world at that moment in time? Sure. But is it possible that you'll play like that forever? Bill Belichick might be dealing with the repercussions of that right now. He did it with a quarterback a little bit later in age, but he also drafted a guy. There was no draft pick. There was a general manager exploring the possibility that a great quarterback prospect could fall all the way into his hands and give him a valuable trade chip. GM has to make all these tough decisions, and he's not supposed to make every single player on the team happy. I mean, he's the one that's firing some of these guys at the end of the day. So in this situation, should Russ have gotten mad about that? I don't think so. But it clearly inflamed the situation. And I think that the big thing that you have to think about when it comes to how things broke down so quickly between Mark Rodgers and the Seattle Seahawks, specifically John Schneider, is that moment in time. And Mark Rodgers, who is Russell Wilson's agent, seemed to take that very personally. Russell Wilson's camp constantly were mad about the fact that the Seahawks weren't paying a lot of money for offensive linemen in free agency, and they felt that was a reflection of the Seahawks not actually caring about fixing pass protection, which is what Russell Wilson wanted fixed. Okay. I mean, it's a very simplistic way of looking at things, right? There's a salary cap, and generally offensive linemen that hit the open market are going to be overpaid after being allowed to walk by teams that don't think that they are worth what they would get on the open market. So the Seahawks should just throw a ton of money at an offensive lineman and maybe debilitate their chances to, I don't know, keep Tyler Lockett around long-term, keep DK Metcalf around long-term. You know, you have to choose where you put your money. And it felt like Russell Wilson believed that the Seahawks were operating like the late 90s New York Yankees without a salary cap. And I guess more specifically, not the late 90s Yankees, maybe the early 2000s Yankees where they started to go crazy and they bring in Alex Rodriguez. It doesn't work like that. That, to me, just shows a complete lack of understanding of football. Not surprising because Mark Rodgers, not a football agent. He's a Russell Wilson agent. Some more. February 2021, there was that athletic piece from Michael Shandugar, and that's when Mark Rodgers, not Russell Wilson, but Mark Rodgers, Russell Wilson's agent, said on record that he'd waive his no-trade clause to play for the Raiders, the Saints, the Cowboys, or the Bears. What the fuck, right? I mean, that is inexcusable. That one's the worst. I don't want to be traded, but here's where I'd want to be traded to. Is that not worse than, I don't know, a general manager looking at alternative quarterback options should they fall in the draft? I think it's significantly worse. And maybe someone at the end of the day should have stacked up all the transgressions or perceived slights that the Seahawks might have of Russell Wilson to them and then compare it with what the Seahawks did to Russ. Because I think, notably, the Seahawks kept quiet on all of this. Russ made a lot of noise in that offseason and between last season and the 2020 year where they lose in the Rams to end the season. I mean, Russ talked a lot. Seahawks were zip. I think they deserve a lot of credit for that because I think I would have been pissed and probably opened my big old mouth. The end of the year press conference, another highlight of the Brady Henderson article, which I encourage you to check out, ESPN.com. Russ, unprompted, said, I know for me personally, I hope it's not my last game in Seattle. No one fucking asked you, man. No one asked. You just kind of dropped that. Some more. Pete Carroll did want to keep Russell Wilson. And I think if you go back to 2017, there was a story, again, about how the team, specifically the defenders, felt that Russ showed a lot of preferential treatment to Pete Carroll and were annoyed, from Pete Carroll. Russ got a lot from Pete Carroll, and the defenders felt annoyed by that. And I think part of that's the defense being a little bit unrealistic. But as time wears on and as all those things happen over the course of 2 years, I kind of figured out how maybe some of those Seahawks defenders thought Russ was a little fake, a little bit too political, and not their guy. The Seahawks ultimately did good by Russ. I don't think they should have. I think they should have kept on to him and tried to see if it would work out one more year. Maybe they realize, the writing's on the wall. We think that Russ's play is going to continue to diminish, which I would argue it is. His escapability is not the same that it used to be. And that the longer they hold on to him, the less that they will get back in return. I wanted everyone to know why Russ got under my skin the way that he did over the last 2 years, because I feel like I have been a little bit petty and personal. I'm glad this article came out, because now it is all in writing. These are all things I heard. Now it's all out in the open.